The Minoan Civilization was an Aegean Bronze Age civilization that arose on the island of Crete and other Aegean islands and flourished from approximately 3650 to 1400 BCE. It belongs to a period of Greek history preceding both the Mycenaean civilization and ancient Greece. It was rediscovered at the beginning of the 20th century through the work of British archaeologist Arthur Evans. Historian Will Durant dubbed the Minoans the first link in the European chain, and the civilization has been referred to as the earliest of its kind in Europe. The term Minoan refers to the mythic king Minos, and was originally given as a description to the pottery of this period. Minos was associated in Greek myth with the labyrinth and the Minotaur, which Evans identified with the site at Knossos, the largest Minoan site. The poet Homer recorded a tradition that Crete once had 90 cities. The Minoan period saw significant contacts between Crete, the Aegean and the Mediterranean, particularly the Near East. As traders and artists, their cultural influence reached far beyond the island of Crete, throughout the Cyclades, to Egypt's Old Kingdom, to copper-bearing Cyprus, Canaan, and the Levantine coasts beyond, and to Anatolia. Some of its best art is preserved in the city of Akrotiri, on the island of Santorini, destroyed during the Thera eruption. The Minoan language and writing system remain undeciphered and a matter of academic dispute, but seemingly convey a language entirely different from the Greek dialects in later periods. The causes of the changes to bring about the end of the Minoan period are unclear, though theories include an invasion from the mainland, or the volcanic eruption of Thera. Etymology. The term Minoan refers to the mythic king Minos of Knossos, who first coined the term is debated. It is commonly attributed to the archaeologist Arthur Evans. Minos was associated in Greek myth with the labyrinth, which Evans identified with the site at Knossos. However, Carl Hoek used the name Das Minoische Crete already in 1825 for Volume 2 of his major work, Crete, which would appear to be the first known use of the term Minoan to mean ancient Cretan. Likely, Arthur Evans read the book, continuing the use of the term in his own writings and findings. Evans said, "To this early civilization of Crete as a whole I have proposed, and the suggestion has been generally adopted by the archaeologists of this and other countries, to apply the name Minoan." Evans claims to have applied it, but not to have invented it. Hoek had in mind the Crete of mythology. He had no idea that the archaeological Crete had existed. Evans's 1931 claim that the term was unminted before his use of it has been tagged a brazen suggestion by Karadimas and Momigliano. However, Evans's statement applies to an archaeological context, since he was the one who discovered the civilization, and the term could not have been in use to refer to it previously. He did coin that specific meaning. Chronology and History. Rather than associate absolute calendar dates for the Minoan period, archaeologists used two systems of relative chronology. The first, created by Evans and modified by late archaeologists, is based on pottery styles and the presence of imported Egyptian artifacts, which can be correlated with the chronology of ancient Egypt. Evans's scheme divides the Minoan period into three main eras: early Minoan, middle Minoan, and late Minoan. These eras are further subdivided, for instance, into early Minoan 1, 2, 3. Another dating system, proposed by the Greek archaeologist Nicholas Platon, is based on the development of the architectural complexes known as palaces at Knossos, Phaistos, Mylia and Kato-Zakros. He divides the Minoan period into pre-palatial, proto-palatial, neo-palatial and post-palatial subperiods. The relation relationship between these two systems is given in the accompanying table, with approximate calendar dates drawn from Warren and Hankey. The Thera eruption occurred during a mature phase of the LMA period. Efforts to establish the calendar date of the volcanic eruption have been extremely controversial. Radiocarbon dating has indicated a date in the late 17th century BCE. Those radiocarbon dates, however, conflict with the estimates of archaeologists, who synchronize the eruption with the conventional Egyptian chronology and obtain a date of around 1525 to 1500 BCE. See the article on dating the Thera eruption for more discussion. The eruption often is identified as a natural event catastrophic for the culture, leading to its rapid collapse. History. There is recent stone tool evidence that humans, either pre-human hominins or early modern humans, reached the island of Crete as early as 530,000 years ago. However, the evidence for the first anatomically modern human presence dates to 10,000–12,000 years ago. The oldest evidence of modern human inhabitants on Crete, a pre-ceramic Neolithic farming community, remains that date to approximately 7000 BC. A comparative study of DNA haplogroups of modern Cretan men showed that a male founder group from Anatolia of the Levant is shared with the Greeks. The Neolithic population dwelt in open villages. Fishermen's huts were built on the shores, while the fertile Messara plain was used for agriculture. The Bronze Age began in Crete around 2700 BCE. In the late 3rd millennium BCE, several localities on the island developed into centers of commerce and handwork. This enabled the upper classes to continuously practice leadership activities and to expand their influence. It is likely that the original hierarchies of the local elites were replaced by monarchist power structures, a precondition for the creation of the Great Palaces. The early Bronze Age has been described as showing promise of greatness, in the light of the later developments on the island. At the end of the MMAI period, there was a large disturbance in Crete, probably an earthquake, or possibly an invasion from Anatolia. The palaces at Knossos, Phaistos, Mylia, and Kato-Sakros were destroyed. At the start of the Neo-Palatial period, population increased again. The palaces were rebuilt on a larger scale and new settlements were built all over the island. This period represents the apex of the Minoan Civilization. There was another natural catastrophe around 1600 BCE, possibly an eruption of the Thera volcano. The Minoans rebuilt the palaces, however they drastically changed. The influence of the Minoan Civilization outside Crete has been seen in the evidence of valuable Minoan handicraft items on the Greek mainland. The shaft graves of Mycenae show several Cretan imports, such as the bull's head writing, which suggests a prominent role for the symbolism of Minoan Crete in the ideology of rule there. After around 1700 BCE, the material culture on the Greek mainland achieved a new level due to Minoan influence. Connections between Egypt and Crete are prominent. Minoan ceramics are found in Egyptian cities, and the Minoans imported several items from Egypt, especially papyrus, as well as architectural and artistic ideas. The Egyptian hieroglyphs served as a model for the Minoan pictographic writing, from which the famous Linear and Linear B writing systems later developed. Bengtson has also demonstrated Minoan influence among Canaanite artifacts. Around 1450 BCE, Minoan culture experienced a turning point due to a natural catastrophe, possibly an earthquake. Another eruption of the Thera volcano has been linked to this downfall, but its dating and implications remain controversial. Several important palaces in locations such as Malia, Knossos, Phaistos, Triada, as well as the living quarters of Knossos were destroyed. The palace in Knossos seems to have remained largely intact. This resulted in the dynasty in Knossos being able to spread its influence over large parts of Crete, until it was overrun by Mycenaean Greeks. The Minoan palace sites were occupied by the Mycenaeans around 1420 BCE, who adapted the Linear A Minoan script to the needs of their own Mycenaean language. It was a form of Greek, which was written in Linear B. The first such archive anywhere is in the LMAI era room of the Chariot tablets. The Mycenaeans generally tended to adapt, rather than destroy, Minoan culture, religion and art. They continued to operate the economic system and bureaucracy of the Minoans. During LMAIA, 1 Amenhotep III Akom el-Hatan took note of KFDW as one of the secret lands of the north of Asia. Also mentioned are Cretan cities, such as Amnisos, Phaistos, Idonia, and Knossos, and some toponyms reconstructed as belonging to the Cyclades of the Greek mainland. If the values of these Egyptian names are accurate, then this pharaoh did not privilege LMAI Knossos above the other states in the region. After about a century of partial recovery, most Cretan cities and palaces went into decline in the 13th century BCE. The last Linear A archives date to LMAIA. Knossos remained an administrative center until 1200 BCE. The last of the Minoan sites was the defensive mountain site of Kharfi, a refuge site which displays vestiges of Minoan civilization almost into the Iron Age. Geography. Crete is a mountainous island with natural harbors. There are signs of earthquake damage at many Minoan sites and clear signs of both uplifting of land and submersion of coastal sites due to tectonic processes all along the coasts. Homer recorded a tradition that Crete had 90 cities. To judge from the palace sites, the island was probably divided into at least 8 political units during the height of the Minoan period. The north is thought to have been governed from Knossos, the south from Phaistos, the central eastern part from Mylia, the eastern tip from Kato-Zakros, and the west from Hania. Smaller palaces have been found in other places. Some of the major Minoan archaeological sites are Palaces Knossos. The largest Bronze Age archaeological site on Crete was purchased for excavations by Evans on March 16, 1900. Phaistos, the second largest palatial building on the island, excavated by the Italian school shortly after Knossos. Mylia, the subject of French excavations, a palatial center which affords look into the development of the palaces in the proto-palatial period. Kato-Zakros, a palatial site excavated by Greek archaeologists in the far east of the island. This is also referred to as Zakro in archaeological literature. Galatas, the most recently confirmed palatial site, a Geotriada, an administrative center close to Phaistos. Gornia, a town site excavated in the first quarter of the 20th century by the American School. Pyrgos, an early Minoan site on the south of the island. Vasiliki, an early Minoan site towards the east of the island which gives its name to a distinctive ceramic ware. Fornu Corfi, a site on the south of the island. Pisera, island town with ritual sites. Mount Juktish, the greatest of the Minoan peak sanctuaries because of its association with the Palace of Knossos. Arkalu Chori, the find site of the famous Arkalu Choriax. Kharfi, a refuge site from the late Minoan period, one of the last of the Minoan sites. Akrotiri, settlement on the island of Santorini, near the site of the Thera eruption. Zomanthos, a mountainous city in the northern foothills of Mount Ida. Settlements of the Minoan Civilization. These are the estimated populations of hamlets, villages, and towns of the Minoan Civilization over time. Note that there are several problems with estimating the sizes of individual settlements, and the highest estimates for a given settlements in a given period may be several times the lowest. Minoans beyond Crete. Minoans were traders, and the cultural contacts reached far beyond the island of Crete, to Egypt's Old Kingdom, the copper-bearing Cyprus, Canaan, and the Levantine coasts beyond, and to Anatolia. In late 2009, Minoan-style frescoes and other Minoan-style artifacts were discovered during excavations of the Canaanite palace at Tel Kabri, Israel, leading archaeologists to conclude that the Minoan influence was the strongest foreign influence on that Canaanite city-state. These are the only Minoan remains ever found in Israel. Minoan techniques and styles in ceramics also provided models of fluctuating influence for Hellenized Greece. Along with the familiar example of Thera, Minoan colonies can be found first at Castri on Cythera, an island close to the Greek mainland that came under Minoan influence in the mid-3rd millennium and remained Minoan in culture for 1,000 years, until Mycenaean occupation in the 13th century. The use of the term colony, however, like thalassocracy, has been criticized in recent years. The Minoan strata that replace a mainland-derived culture in the early Bronze Age, the earliest Minoan settlement outside Crete. The Cyclades were in the Minoan cultural orbit, and, closer to Crete, the islands of Carpathos, Saria and Kassos also contained Minoan colonies, or settlements of Minoan traders, from the Middle Bronze Age. Most of them were abandoned in LMI, but Minoan Carpathos recovered and continued with a Minoan culture until the end of the Bronze Age. Other supposed Minoan colonies, such as that hypothesized by Adolf Furtwängler for Aegina, were later dismissed by scholars. There was a Minoan colony at Ialissos on Rhodes. Minoan cultural influence indicates an orbit that extended not only throughout the Cyclades but in locations such as Egypt and Cyprus. Paintings from the 15th century BCE in Thebes, Egypt, depict a number of individuals who are Minoan in appearance, bearing gifts. Inscriptions record these people as coming from Keftiu, or the islands in the midst of the sea, and may refer to gift-bringing merchants or officials from Crete. Certain locations within Crete emphasize it as an outward-looking society. The neo-palatial site of Kato-Zakros, for instance, is located within 100 meters of the modern shoreline, situated within a bay. Its large number of workshops and the richness of its site materials indicate a potential entrepot for import and export. Such activities are elaborated in artistic representations of the sea, including the flotilla fresco from room 5 in the West House at Akrotiri. Agriculture and subsistence. The Minoans raised cattle, sheep, pigs, and goats, and grew wheat, barley, vetch, and chickpeas. They also cultivated grapes, figs, and olives, and grew poppies, for poppy seed and, perhaps, opium. The Minoans also domesticated bees. Crops, including lettuce, celery, asparagus and carrots, grow wild in Crete. Pear, quince, and olive trees were also native. The people imported date palm trees and cats from Egypt. They adopted pomegranates from the Near East, although not lemons and oranges, as is often thought. They developed Mediterranean polyculture, the practice of growing more than one crop at a time. The more varied and healthy diet resulted in the growth of population. Theoretically, this method of farming would maintain the fertility of the soil, as well as offer protection against low yields in any single crop. Linear B tablets indicate the importance of orchard farming in processing crops for secondary products. Olive oil in the Cretan diet is comparable to butter in the northern diet. The process of fermenting wine from grapes is likely to have been a concern of the palace economies, whereby such prestige goods would have been both important trade commodities as well as culturally meaningful items of consumption. Equally, it is likely that the consumption of exotic or expensive products would have played a role in the presentation and articulation of political and economic power. Farmers used wooden plows, bound by leather to wooden handles, and pulled by pairs of donkeys or oxen. Marine resources were also important in the Cretan diet. The prevalence of edible mollusks in site material and artistic representations of marine fish and animals, including the distinctive octopus stirrupjar, indicate an appreciation and occasional use of fish within the economy. But scholars believe these resources were not as significant in relation to grain, olives and animal produce. The intensification of agricultural activity is indicated by the construction of terraces and dams at Psaira in the late Minoan period. The Cretan diet included wild game. Cretans hunted and ate wild deer and boar along with the meats made available to them by the livestock. Wild game can no longer be found on Crete. Not all plants and flora would have a purely functional or economic utility. Artistic depictions often show scenes of lily gathering and performances within green spaces. The fresco known as the Sacred Grove at Knossos, for instance, depicts a number of female figures facing towards the left-hand side of the scene, flanked by copses of trees. Some scholars have suggested that these depictions represent the performance of harvest festivals or ceremonies, as a means to honor the continued fertility of the soil. Artistic depictions of farming scenes also appear on the Second Palace period harvest vase, where 27 male figures, led by another, each carry hoes. This suggests the importance of farming as an artistic motif. The discovery of storage magazines within the palace compounds has prompted much debate. At the Second Palace at Phaistos, for instance, a range of rooms in the western side of the structure have been identified as a magazine block. Within these storage areas, numerous jars, jugs and vessels have been recovered, indicating the role of the complex as a potential redistribution center of agricultural produce. Several possibilities may be suggested, including a model where all economic and agricultural produce was controlled by the palace and redistributed by it. At sites such as Knossos, where the town had developed to a considerable size, there is evidence of craft specialization, indicating workshops. The Palace of Cato-Zacro, for instance, indicates workshops that were integrated into the structure of the palace. Such evidence contributes to the theory that the Minoan palatial system developed through economic intensification, where greater agricultural surplus could support a population of administrators, craftsmen and religious practitioners. The number of domestic or sleeping chambers at the palaces indicate that they could have supported a large population of individuals who were removed from manual labor. Evolution of agricultural tools in Minoan Crete. Originally the tools were made of wood or bone, and bound to the handle with leather straps. During the Bronze Age the tools were upgraded to bronze, with wooden handles. Due to its circular hole, the tool head would spin around on the handle. The Minoans developed oval-shaped holes in the tools to fit oval-shaped handles. This stopped the spinning. Tools list: double adze, double axe, single-bladed axe, axe adze, sickle, chisel,